Okay, today's webinar is called Interactive Training Techniques, and Matt and I'll be doing that. Before we plunge into some activities, the session is about making training active. So as we can see on the next slide, here are a bunch of things I want to touch upon as a preface, as a preamble, and some of the principles we abide by. And the first principle is training objectives in our way of designing equal business results. For example, the business result we want to be able to achieve today, that all of you will be producing instructional packages in a faster, cheaper, and better fashion. So we try not to differentiate between this is a training objective, this is the business result. We try to make them congruent with each other. More about this later. The principle number 2 we have is when we design training, we focus on, we spend a lot of resources, a lot of time in designing training activity. By activity, something other than listening to a lecture. So usually when people do instructional design, they do task analysis, they come up with slides and handouts and things of that nature. And as an afterthought, they say, we got to have some activities and throw in some activities. In contrast to that, as Matt will explain a little bit later, we actually begin with designing training activities like a simulation or a game or a role play, which will be core of our training. And that doesn't mean we are going to ignore all of the content. We actually package the activities with the content. So sometimes we present the necessary content before the activities. We call it briefing. Sometimes we wait until the activity is finished and we have a discussion to identify and emphasize the content. We call it debriefing. And sometimes we stop the activity in the middle and say, hey, folks, let me give you some ideas on how to perform better in this activity. We call it coaching. So activities and the content are gradually, slowly, systematically integrate with each other. And item number 4, we use a variety of training design approaches, training and instructional design approaches. Most of you are familiar with the ADDIE approach, the analysis, design, development, and so on. We can do ADDIE type of approach. Some clients want it. And we can also do certain agile kind of activities for instructional design. So we use a variety of technical and non-technical variety of approaches to instructional design, because we don't think if you have only one way to do training design, then we are doomed to fail miserably. Item number 5, one other principle we use is, if you're delivering the training, your job is to facilitate learning and not to give a lecture. You don't pontificate. Your job is not to make presentations. If that is the only job you have, you can be replaced by an MP4 player. And item number 6, we treat the participants, the learners, the students, the participants in a variety of ways. Sometimes we have them actually generate training content. We have them test each other. We have them generate subject matter, all of those things. To us, a learner is not supposed to have only one role. Learner can be an evaluator, a trainer, a content specialist, and a variety of ways. So we try to exploit the learner. And item number 7, one thing we believe in is we don't design training workshops or training as an event. We feel what happens before a training webinar, for example, is as important, if not more important, than what happens during the workshop, during the webinar. Equally importantly, what happens after the training, the follow-up activities is also very, very important. And there are some interesting data which says in terms of learning as measured by change in performance, only 20% of your learning is due to the training event, the lecture, the workshop, or the video. The other parts of the learning, what happens before and what happens after, is causes 80% of learning. So here are 5 different things, and I want Matt to talk about how exactly does do activities, which is our main theme, how exactly do they come in your training design approach?
Great. And before we dive into this, I just want to point out, Kayleen, I hope you're not taking too many notes as you're driving in the car. So be careful. So there are a lot of models for designing instruction. This is just a synthesis of several of them that and cover some of the key attributes we care about. One of the most important things for Tyagi and me is that we always start with the end in mind. We always start with an outcome. We start with the objective. And as Tyagi said, that's often a business outcome. From that, we design what's called a performance test that reflects a fairly accurate version of that objective. And then we design activities and content to facilitate the development, the skill development for passing that test. And we don't usually design a lot of content because content is pretty pervasive all over the place. But what we focus on is designing activities that leverage that content. In fact, if I was a little more artistic, you'd see an arrow going the other way with content and activities. So it would be an arrow going in both directions, but I don't know how to do that. So we design the activities, we leverage the content, and those activities and content should lead learners to being able to pass the performance test. And one of the things that Tyagi always reminds me is performance tests are really just activities. And so in essence, even the performance test is another way of us to think about always focusing on the activity. Finally, we need to evaluate how well that performance test aligned to the original objective. And that brings us back full circle. And so we like to think of design as an iterative process, something that continues throughout time. So we're constantly tweaking and adapting our designs, but we focus on outcomes, building a performance test, leveraging activities and content, and evaluating that success all the way through and as concurrently as possible. Tyagi, can you share with everyone the difference between a game and a training game?
Okay, so this is a Venn diagram which we scribbled on the back of a napkin long time ago. So if you look at this diagram, on top, there is a circle which says training. What is training? towards training is based on competencies, certain performance skills, anything which produces an increase or improvement of competency is training. And if you look at the right-hand side, you can use games, and we are all familiar with games. I spent the last 92 years of my life trying to come up with a definition of game, and as the circle says, all games are conflict, which need not be competition. Games require you to achieve a goal, and there are some obstacles. All games have control. These are the rules of the game. You'll have to abide by the rules of the game. All games come to an end, contrary to what you may feel after playing Monopoly. All games got to come to an end sooner or later, and all games are contrived situations. Contrivance means you can say, after all, it's only a game, so don't take it seriously. We can have some games which have training objectives. They produce competency on your basis. So the intersection of training and games is a training game, and that is the type of games we'll be using and talking about today. And some of these games also reflect the real world. This is the correspondence. So they become a simulation. What is a simulation? It is an activity where the process and the artifacts used in this activity reflect what is happening in the real world. So if you really want to get confused, you can look at the intersections. You can have training simulations, like a flight trainer is a training simulation. You can have a simulation game like Monopoly is a crude simulation game simulating real estate manipulation. You can have a training game, some of which we will see very soon. And you can also have a training simulation game which teaches you some objectives, which reflects the real world, and it is a game because there are winners and losers and there are rules. So this is another little conceptual framework we want to keep remembering. Matt?
Okay, so we've just given you a lecture. And one of the ways in which games can be used is to leverage the content from a lecture into a way to engage participants. So we'd like to play a game with you right now to review the material that Tyagi and I just shared with you. This game is called Superlatives. We call it specifically an interactive lecture game. Here's how it's going to work. We're going to ask you a question. Either hop on your microphone, so unmute yourself and just share your thoughts with us, or feel free to provide the answer in the chat, and we will get your perspectives on some of the questions we ask. Sound good? All right, here's question number 1. Based on what Tyagi and I just shared with you, what was the most important idea for you? What was the most important concept for you? Again, either in the chat or hop on your microphone and just tell us. So Darren says activity-driven design. Thanks, Darren.
For me, it is the role of the participants. I think number 5 or 6 in your slide.
That's great.
Yes.
Thanks. And Esther says, starting with the end in mind.
Roles of participants.
Great. William says, separating and defining training, games, and simulation. Bethany, only 20% of learning happens in the activity itself. Great. Anyone else want to hop on the mic? All right, here's question number 2. What was the most unexpected idea we shared with you? What was the most unexpected?
They knew everything, so nothing was unexpected for them.
William says that
No.
all games have conflict. Go ahead. Who just piped in?
This Ellen. I was just going to say that the follow-up at the end is, and the pre is 80%, because I struggle with, getting the people I'm working with to follow up and follow through.
Cool. Thanks, Ellen.
Wonderful. Matt, let me add something to William.
Sure.
William, I said all games have conflict. That does not necessarily mean people have to be competing with each other or attacking each other. You can have a game where the time element is the important thing. So, okay, William, can you count in Italian from 1 to however many number, and we will see if we can count up to 1,000 in Italian within a minute. And conflict, yes, it is a constraint, is a part of it, William, but having a goal. So there are two elements to a conflict. One is you have a goal or an objective you want to achieve, and there is something in the activity which prevents you or slows you down from achieving the goal. So it could be the players of the other team. It could be a time limit. It could be you're not given any money and you're asked to say, okay, cook a meal which will feed 8 people or something like that. So your goal is cook for 8 people. The obstacle is you don't have any money to buy the food.
Right. Thanks, Tiagi. I'm going to proceed quickly through questions 3 through 5. So we won't do that, but this game could continue. And we could actually spend an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours just going deeply into the questions, reviewing your reflections on the content. So for example, we might dive into what was the most difficult concept. And maybe we can leverage the example from William's question around competition and conflict. We might ask what was the most compatible idea for you in terms of how you could apply it back on the job and what you do.
Which also means what is an idea with which you are already familiar and things of that nature.
What was the most controversial idea and so forth. So, and you could even get the participants to share with you questions that they have. And so this is a way for us to really dive into the ways in which people reflect on the information, are thinking about the information, questioning it, and so forth. Again, this is an interactive lecture. Tiagi?
The idea is to give a lean, brief presentation, and using these types of adjectives, how people think about what is difficult, what is easy, and use it like William's question was a good opportunity for us as the facilitator to add more content. So this interactive lecture approach enables us to give you just in time, just enough, and just for you type of content.
Tiagi, approximately how many interactive lecture games are there?
Okay. The book we have has 40 different interactive lecture games, and we may have opportunities to talk about more of them. So I have disappeared.
This has been my wish for years.
Here is one of the books called Interactive Lectures is Not an Oxymoron. And by the way, Max will tell you how to get this book free of charge. Good.
All right. So let's talk about some more games. Tiagi, can you introduce our groupings?
Okay. So we are going to be talking about a maximum of 22 items. Here is the first random set of 4 items. And one technique we use is to use a magic trick, like Matt and I used to saw a woman in half. She now lives in Paris and Brussels. Haha. So we use a magic trick and use it as a metaphor for teaching some important concept. We also have some games called device games. For example, we train people how to use an iPad, and instead of lecturing to them, we give them the iPad, give them a challenge for them to accomplish, and say, go to it. Use trial and error, use the help screens, and figure out how to do it. Table exploration, number 3. We give them a table, like if we want to teach the different types of products we sell, their specifications, their model number, their details like this, we put it in the form of a table, but we leave some of the cells of the table, some of the boxes in the table blank, and have them figure out what goes into that box using logical reasoning. And we have values clarification. For example, would you kill William to save 3 different people because he has a functioning liver, a functioning brain, and a functioning heart? Can we use him to, can we transplant parts of his body to save 3 people instead of just William? So these are our first set of training activities.
So Tyagi and I thought what we would do is, as we chunk these into different categories, we'd give you some samples of these activities and have you guys ask us questions about the ones we don't share with you, as well as the ones we do. So would you like to see a magic trick? All right, I'm gonna read someone's mind. Before I do though, Ev, I sent you the name of a playing card. Can you hold it up in front of the camera without showing the name of the card, just so people don't think you're writing it at a later point? So just make sure no one can see it. Just hold it up there. Great. Now, can I have a volunteer? How about you, Ellen?
Okay. Sure. Happy to.
All right, Ellen. Do you know how to play cards? Do you like playing card games?
Sure. Hearts, spades.
Excellent, excellent. So you're a bit of a card shark then.
Maybe.
All right. Well, I'm going to hand you an imaginary deck of cards through the computer. So, and it's
okay,
a
thank you.
deck,
Got it.
52 cards. Do you know what the 2 colors are in a traditional deck? What are they?
Red and blue.
Red
or
and
black, excuse me.
There you go. Red and black, red and blue. We'll go with red and black. Which do you prefer, red cards or black cards?
Red.
I can see the passion through the computer in you. So great. Throw away the black cards and keep the red ones in your hand, okay? Very good. Now, there are 2 red suits. What are they?
They are diamonds and hearts.
Very good. Which do you prefer?
Hearts.
Aw, you're romantic. Very good. Throw away the diamonds, keep the hearts in your hand. Excellent, excellent. Now, there are image cards, the Jack, the Queen, the King, and there are number cards, the Ace through the 10. You prefer number cards or image cards?
Number cards.
Oh, very good, very good. Do me a favor, take the number cards, put them in your pocket. You got to take them home as a souvenir from us, okay? Now leave 3 image cards in your hand, the Jack, the Queen, and the King. Who would you like to have lunch with? The Prince, the Queen, or the King?
The Queen.
Very good, very good. Ev happens to actually have a card written on a piece of paper And this is the person you'll probably have lunch with. Ev, can you flip the card around and show it to everyone? Get it really close. Can you all see? There's your Queen of Hearts.
Cool.
I'm not sure she really thinks it's cool. So, okay, this is a very silly trick, right? Can someone explain how we do it? Who picked up on it? Who knows how this trick was done?
Telepathy.
Very good. Ellen and I had a connection. So very good. Sarah says it's a process of elimination. Yeah, that's a very big part of it. What else is a component of it? Bethany says knowing the end goal. Absolutely. I knew we wanted to get to the Queen of Hearts. Very good. What would have happened if Ellen had said she prefers black cards? What might I have said? If she said black cards, how would I have kept the red cards in her hand? Exactly. Put them in your pocket. I would just accept it. In improv, and our friend William is one of the best improv people in the world, would say, you yes and the offer from Ellen. So she keeps the red cards in her hand because she said she preferred the black ones. We say, great, take them home with you, or some variant of that. The key to this trick is knowing the end point and paying attention to the participant and remaining flexible and changing the journey based on the interaction we have with her. And this, to us, is the definition of good facilitation. So we like to use this magic trick as an anchoring metaphor for how to facilitate. We can also use this trick with managers on how to be a good, flexible, compassionate manager. We can use it with leaders. We can use it in a myriad of different contexts, just by, as William said, adjusting to the response in real time. So this is an example of using a magic trick as an anchoring metaphor throughout your training. Tyagi, any additional thoughts?
So this is a theme we will keep coming back. And by the way, being able to think on your feet and being able to focus on your goal, that is all there is to it. And the third part is letting the inmates run the asylum, letting your participants contribute to ask open-ended questions. They give an answer. You just go with the flow. So how do you become an expert in being able to improvise this way? You can take William's workshop, but that is expensive. Here is a cheap way. Buy a deck of cards and go home and shuffle the deck, take a random card, stick it inside an envelope, call your significant other and say, honey, do you like red cards or black cards? You perform this activity. The most important thing you got to remember is never forget what you put inside the envelope. If you forget it, you're in big trouble. So you can walk a person through and react to the responses given by the person. So this is day one. Day two, call somebody else who is younger, different from the first person. So keep doing this magic trick for 52 days to a different person, and that will teach you how to think on your feet and how to take into account the ideas and the responses given by your participant. Thank you, Matt.
Great. Let's move on to group two.
Group two, structured sharing. This is based on the simple philosophy. Adult learners know a lot of important things. Everything we are going to be exploring, teaching, helping you acquire, you already know. Our job is to have you share it with each other, so the content comes from the participants and the activity enables them to share their thoughts, their ideas, their opinions and knowledge with each other. Card games, we have a variety of 20 different types of card games for instructional purposes. And we will explain some of these games later. PC simulations, the PC stands for playing card simulations. For example, the activity that Matt did, the magic trick, uses playing cards. We have another activity which we learned from William called status walk. Everybody gets a playing card, puts it on top of his forehead and walks around. So you don't know what card you have, but everybody else can see the card. You tell them this is a company picnic. You mingle and talk to each other, and the way you address the other person is dependent on his status. And the status is indicated by the playing card. If somebody has a king, is the president of the corporation. And if somebody has a 2, he's just a support staff. So we can talk about the diversity, we can talk about different statuses using this activity that uses a playing card. A texture game is you give people a piece of text to read, and then you do a quiz activity or a group project based on what they have read. So the content comes from reading materials, and the activity forces them to recall and apply the reading materials. So these are 4 other types of training activities or training games. Back to you, Matt.
Great. So we're going to play a game that's one of our favorites called the Hello game. This game is a structured sharing game, and we're going to use the breakout function in Zoom to do it. Here's how it's going to work. Can I ask you to, if you have a phone or the tablet, take a picture of this screen right now. I'll give you a second to do that as I walk you through some of the rest of the instructions. This way you'll know what your specific question is for your team. I'm going to break you into 5 teams of approximately 5 to 6 people each, and each team is going to be assigned one of the questions. If you are in team 1, your question is, what are the characteristics of a good activity? Team 2, what can cause an activity to fail, and so forth. When I send you into the breakout room, you have 5 minutes only. Normally, we give the teams a lot more time to flesh these out, but because this is a webinar, we're going to cut the timing a little bit short to just give you a taste. Please identify one person on your team to take notes and be willing to share with the large group when we come back. Okay, so identify a leader and a scribe who's willing to present. Okay? If you have any technical issues, don't worry. We'll call you. We're going to call you back quickly enough. But everyone should be able to talk, see each other, and chat as you go. Sound good? All right. I'm going to begin the breakout rooms.
Okay, group 5 is back.
Very good. Can I get someone from any of the teams to share with us their question and some of the answers they've come up with? You'll have to unmute yourself when you're ready.
Group 1, happy
Great.
to give a quick report. I'm not sure we actually met the goals of that we identified in the breakout room itself, but we thought that there are 4 things that came up for us in the group. One was characteristics of a good activity are high engagement, relevance, they line up to the objective, the activity lines up to the objectives, and that all participants feel like they can contribute.
Wonderful. Thanks, William. How about someone from group 2 or 3 or 4 or 5?
I can speak for group 2.
Great.
So we came up with 9 possible failure modes for an activity. The first one was no end to the activity. It just went on and on. Second was how the clarity of the debrief. Unclear debrief could be a failure mode. Same with the clarity of the instructions is another. Too many instructions at once. Too simple of an activity where everyone comes to the conclusion too quickly, too easily. No debrief to the activity. Instructors that help too much. Experienced people in the room that may spoil the solution or spoil the game, the activity. And a lack of a safe learning environment, psychological safety.
This is a great list. Excellent. Thanks, Chris. How about someone from group 3?
That would be me. So we have 2 different sides of things. We said more of the physical sides of what our question was. So everybody knows what factors determine which activity you should use. So physically, what methods are you using? So is it a webinar? Is it in a class? The number of participants you have, the space, are there language barriers? Do you even have materials? Can these be used? And then what time allotted? And then on the other side of things, what's the end goal, the learning objectives for them? What's the complexity level? And then also looking at the cultural norms that you're presenting within.
Wonderful. Thanks, Bethany. And good to see you. So, excellent. How about team 4?
I can speak for team 4, Kayla here.
Thanks, Kayla.
We came up with the agility to be able to flow with the group, adjust on the go, willingness to play, willingness to participate, being able to listen to the audience and what they're doing in the activity, how they're doing in the activity, competence in what you're facilitating, not only familiar with the activity itself, but the content as well, and be able to encourage the participants who may be uncomfortable doing different kinds of activities, who are used to just having to sit and listen. And I think that was as far as we got.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kayla. And last but definitely not least, what are the reasons people may give not to use games from group 5?
Okay, so we came up with 5 reasons. Number 1, we don't have enough time to use games. We are gonna lose the core message in the process, and we can lose the control of the participants. They can also be like a cultural aspect to it, like games are not for us. And in addition to that, we are not here to play.
Excellent. Thank you, Esther. Appreciate it. Now, one of the cool things about the Hello game is when we conduct this live, we have some variation to it. So for example, one variation when we do this live is we'll ask you to get answers to your assigned question from every single person in the room, not just your team. Another variation, we'll give you a planning stage. We'll give you a gathering stage, an analysis stage. So we'll step you through the process for each phase of the information gather. What are some of the attributes of this game that you noticed that worked for you?
First of all, I
participation.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
First
Go
of
ahead,
all, I
Luis.
was amazed by the technology, the way we have been successful. You have been successful to put us in groups. So it's amazing for me. Thanks.
Great. Yeah. I side note, I love Zoom for just that very reason. So it's nice to get large groups to participate in the small groups. Someone else had a comment? Who was that?
There's a lot of wisdom. Ellen, you have a lot of wisdom and variety in the room. So there's just a richness of wisdom.
Wonderful.
I completely agree with that, Ellen.
And it allows the facilitator to work less hard.
Tiagi has taught me to be a lazy facilitator. So, Tiagi, do you have some additional thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, suggest a ground rule. Anytime I scratch my nose, that means I have a profound thought I want to share to everybody.
What about when you
Good.
scratch your head?
That means somebody has a profound thought I would like to hear from them. Okay, so this is an example of structured sharing. Where did the useful information, where did the content come from in this activity? Fortunately, I can read what you type on the chat. I can listen to you when you say something. And most importantly, I can read your mind. So even if you don't talk anything, I know exactly what you're thinking about. So the content did not come from Matt. Content did not come from me. All we did, all Matt did, and all I did was to come up with the 5 questions. Why 5? Because we thought it's a cute number. And whatever topic you teach, you can come up with some open-ended, preliminary, basic questions and have people get into teams and talk to each other. I was impressed by the quality of the information, quality of the responses you collected. Could we have done a better job? Maybe, but you did a great job. So the other point I want to emphasize is every game we explore today, you can steal the game. You can, our approach to instructional design is called plagiarism. Any game we play, keep the process, keep the activity the same, but change the content depending on whatever you want to teach. Okay, end of my pontification.
Great. So we move now into our third group. Tiagi?
Okay, so group number 3, by the way, these are random groups. Group number 3, interactive storytelling. For example, in teaching cultural diversity, we tell people about a critical incident that took place in Mogadishu, wherein a consultant is perceiving certain things. So we tell the story from the outside consultant's point of view. And then we ask the people to think of a local person who was involved in the story and retell the story from the point of view of this particular character who comes from a different culture. Photo cards, we will see them. These are like picture postcards showing critical things. So we can hold up a picture and say, in this picture, there are 5 safety violations. Can you discover them? Case method is same as storytelling, but if you call it case method, you can charge more money for creating it. A case method, you describe a situation, have the participants analyze the situation and come up with ideas. Instructional puzzles, instead of giving a final test in terms of multiple choice, we can give them a crossword puzzle and say, solve this puzzle using the information you collected. And role play activities, you can, you are all familiar with that. So a set of 5 different interactive activity approaches, and Matt will randomly select one of them and demonstrate that.
So let's run a storytelling activity. And this type of activity we call unfinished story. Some of you I know us, and you may have heard this story before. If you have, hold back your thoughts, but then share them later. This is a story by a guy named Frederick Brown. And I'm going to read this story to you, and then we'll ask you some questions. So here it is. You can also follow along on the screen. Sentry by Frederick Brown. He was wet and hungry and cold, and he was 50,000 light years from home. He was on a damn planet he did not know. War never changes. After thousands of years, it was still very easy for the pilots, high up in their shining spaceships with all their sophisticated weapons. After thousands of years, it was still the ordinary soldier's task, the infantrymen, to fight the enemy and die in battle. The aliens were there too, the aliens, the only other intelligent race in the galaxy, cruel, horrible monsters. The first contact with the aliens took place in the center of the galaxy, and war broke out immediately. They started to shoot. They did not try to negotiate or to make peace. Now the war continued planet by planet. He was wet and hungry and cold. The fierce wind hurt his eyes, but the aliens were there, ready to infiltrate, and all the positions were vital. He stayed alert, his gun ready, and then he saw one of them creeping towards him. Okay. Here's the instruction. Think about the story. How would you end it? We'll give you a minute to think about it, and then we'd ask you to share your ending via microphone, or feel free to use the chat. All right. Who's got an ending to share? Or at least the beginning of one.
So he was dreaming.
He woke up in his warm bed. Lisa says the infantryman saw the alien and was wounded. It appeared to be young. Sarah says anticlimactic, I know. By the way, you should know I'm reading some of these because on the video recordings, the text won't show up. So I hope you don't mind me reading some of these out loud. Kayla says she likes happy endings, so she'll say that they became friends and led the revolution of peace.
Good.
Great. These are all excellent. Are you ready to see the ending Frederick Brown wrote? Here it is. He aimed his gun and opened fire. The alien made that strange, horrible cry they all make, and then a deathly silence. It was dead. The sight of the dead body made him shudder. They were horrible, disgusting creatures with only 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and awful white skin, and without scales. So that's the ending Frederick Brown wrote. What are your thoughts? What are your initial reactions? Kelly says it's not what she was expecting. Who, Frederick Brown? Yeah, he tricked us all. Where might you use this story? Yep, bias, diversity, multiculturalism. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly where we use it. And from a frame, you can take any story, cut out the ending, and ask participants to finish the story. And so it's another way to get people engaged and immersing themselves in the activity. So, Tiagi, additional thoughts before we move on?
Okay. Here is a book called Interactive Storytelling. Matt, do you have a copy of this book by any chance?
Not in front of me, no.
Okay. How could you do a webinar without a copy of the book in front of you?
You've written over 70 books. I don't have them all in front of me.
Ah, unfortunate. So this book contains 30 different types of interactive storytelling. And later, if we have some more time, we will go through another variety of storytelling. Storytelling is powerful. That is the good news. Storytelling puts the listeners in a passive mode. That is the bad news. If you believe in interactivity, you don't want all your students to be in a trance form listening to your story. That is called brainwashing. If you really want them to learn something useful, you'll have to make them do something interactive, like finishing the story or like telling the story from a different point of view. and more about this later. So our approach is make your storytelling an active participatory approach.
Great. Tiagi, let's do another photo card activity, or our first one, actually.
Okay, here is a photo card activity. How many of you are familiar, have seen the photo jolt cards or photo cards? So primarily, you can use the photo cards for a variety of approaches. The one we are going to use right now is on visual memory.
It's 14 hours.
It is 14 hours now, and Matt is going to show you the pictures 6 one at a time. You shall pause for 5 seconds, try to remember as much of these cards as possible. Keep going, Matt. Good. The main idea is how do you process and recall visual information in contrast to spoken information. What Matt is going to be doing now is going to shuffle the packet of photo cards and is going to show the cards once again. Watch carefully. Here is a challenge for you. We saw 6 different cards, and when Matt shows these cards in a different sequence, one of the cards is left out. We want you to see if we can recall which is the missing card. Here we go. Okay, folks, on the chat area, can you, this is to prevent people from contaminating each other, can you type which card was a brief description of the missing card? Good, good. Many of you recalled the card and described it. And we spend a lot of time asking people what makes a visual easy to remember and things of that nature. So, an old woman and a man on a bench. Okay, Matt, can you go to the list of cards once again, the first set of cards once again, and we will see. Okay.
I'm getting there.
Good.
There we go.
That was not missing. That was not missing. Okay, good. This is the missing card, an old woman and a man on a bench. Okay, this is somebody's recall, Esther's recall. How did she decide it's an old woman? She looks young to me, and so on and so forth. We can spend a lot of time on visual memory. That is good. Let us move on to the next set, Matt.
You mean the next set of activities?
Yes, please.
Yagi, may I make a suggestion? We
Yes.
have about 12 minutes left. May I skip to group 5?
Okay. Actually, you can move on to the next one because group 5, everything seems self-explanatory.
Okay. All right, great. So we're going to start wrapping up the session by ending with some jolts and a thought experiment. Jolts, Tyagi, can you give a quick definition of what a jolt is?
It's an experiential activity that lasts for less than 3 minutes and teaches you the meaning of life.
Great. So we're going to run some jolts for you. And here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to turn on your mics. So unless you think you're causing some feedback, everyone open up their mics. And if you can also make sure you're watching me. Great. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my hands out like this, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. I'm going to say clap. When I say clap, I'd like every single person to clap simultaneously. So 1, 2, 3. I say clap. You all clap simultaneously. Are you ready? Brian, Billy, I'm not sure you're ready. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Clap. All right, very good. Let's try this one more time. Brian, good job. Let's try this one more time. I count to 3. I say clap, you all clap. 1, 2, 3. Clap. All right, very good. I'm gonna ask you all to go back on mute, except for a volunteer to tell us what happened. Brian, you did a good job. Do you have can you get on the mic and tell us what happened?
Well, I'm going to guess that some people anticipated the clap. Some people waited for you to perform the clap before following.
So one of the
I'm going to suggest.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to suggest the first time through you didn't say the word clap. You just clapped.
Oh, I said it afterward. Come on, William. Do what I say, not what I do.
Of course, man.
One of the beautiful things about this jolt is people will invariably follow what you model, but they will, if what you model differs from what you ask of them, there's often a performance gap. And so we can use this jolt when we teach management, when we teach leadership, when we teach change management in a very myriad of different contexts. But this jolt is an excellent way to demonstrate that it is more easy for people to follow the leader who models than follow the leader who just stipulates verbally. And so you have to have alignment between what you say and what you do if you want to be effective with people. And so it's a great activity that takes a few seconds to run, and you can keep coming back to it throughout the day. I've run this where I'll wait an hour, do it again, and people will continuously throughout the day fall for it. And they'll all laugh because they know they did. It's very, very hard to fight the impulse of following the model rather than the instruction. Tyagi, additional thoughts?
Nope.
Okay. Ready for the next one? Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Take your finger and point it all the way up to the ceiling. Now, bring your finger down below your nose. That's the motion I'm going to ask you to do. So go back up, bring your finger up, look at it and move your finger in a clockwise fashion. So 12, 1, 2, 3, etc. As you're turning your finger in a clockwise direction, bring your whole arm down below your nose again. What do you notice? What happened? Still going clockwise?
It appears counterclockwise.
Counterclockwise, how did that happen? Let's try it one more time. Finger up. We go in a clockwise direction. Don't change anything. Bring it down. And what's going on? Why does it switch? Why does it change? Esther says a change of perspective. Billy says the same thing. It's your view, as Lisa points out. If you're looking from below, it's clockwise. But when you change your perspective and look from above, it's counterclockwise. One of the nice things about JOLTS is simple behavioral activities can actually have a profound impact. And that's why JOLTS are fun for people to run, but more importantly, they become, again, anchoring metaphors that we can use throughout our training. Tiagi, any additional thoughts before we move past JOLTS?
No, done.
Okay, I'm gonna skip our thought experiment because we only have 5 minutes left. And I want, oh, I'm not sharing my screen, am I?
No.
Let me get the screen back up.
But Bethany is nicer to look at.
All right. So as we start wrapping this up, I just want to share with you that what we've shared with you is some sample activities. But we have all of the categories we just gave you, plus the samples. And there are a total of 64 different types of activities that Tiagi's identified. In June, specifically June 25 and 26, we're going to run a 2-day virtual program using Zoom that teaches you different techniques for face-to-face live training. So some of the activities we've shown here, some of the ones we didn't get to, we will provide you with tons and tons of activities. We have over 2,000 pages of reference material for you, game protocols, and job aids and tools and references. We'll give you a box of virtual books, and you get a lifetime of access to both of us. However, it's our lifetime, so maybe you only have about a year or two left. So we are going to send you this deck, and the link to find out more about the program in June is right there. And we will give you $100 off for the program if you want to attend as having come to this webinar with us. This will be our 3rd time running this program virtually, and it's a really, really nice way for us to run it. You get to stay in your pajamas if you want. We get to stay in our pajamas, and we do it from the comforts of our homes. So hopefully we will see you in June. Tiagi has an epilogue, though, as we close out the program. Tiagi?
Okay, folks. One of the major things we talk about from our psychological background, as you can see on the next slide, the concept of the Zeigarnik effect. This Boomer Zeigarnik was watching sidewalk cafe waitresses, as we see on the next slide, and she noticed that Heidi, the waitress, did not take down anybody's order, had no difficulty recalling the order and serving the correct thing. That evening, Bloomer came back and said, "Hey, I'm very impressed. Do you remember what I ordered?" And Heidi said, "No, I don't even remember your face." And Bloomer later found out that once Heidi has fulfilled, completed, delivered the order, she forgets everything. Until she delivers the order, she remembers everything accurately. So she said, this is called the Zeigarnik effect. You can do a Google search, and here are the things which was the base of the Zeigarnik effect. And here on the next slide is the explanation of the effect itself. Unfinished things keep rattling in your brain. So as trainers, we have the obsessive compulsive need to bring everything to a logical conclusion. And that, folks, is actually hazardous to learning. So Zeigarnik effect says, if you want people to learn something, don't wait until it is logically finished. And so if I were to summarize the Zeigarnik effect, as a trainer, you don't have to complete what you're doing. You have the right to stop in the middle of a lesson, in the middle of a paragraph, in the middle of a sentence, in the middle of a word. The end.
And if you want to find out more, join us in June. One final non-closing note. This video from this session will take about 24 hours for us to process, and we will send that out to all of you via a link with a job aid and these slides. We really enjoyed our time with all of you. We hope you did as well, and we'll hope to see you soon. Take care, everyone. We'll hang out if you have any questions.